In life, there are mistakes. At times, it would feel like these two terms, life and mistakes, are one and the same. And at others, like they are so far different from each other that one may cease to exist and you wouldn't notice. But truly, at a core level, it's a part of every single person's life. And why do I mention this? Why does anyone care? Because there's a worry that comes along with mistakes. A worry of the things you've done wrong becoming you. A worry of what you've done making everything you've worked for impossible. Of making everyone who's loved you not. And there are cases where this happens. Sometimes when people really go off the deep end, they do things that you can't come back from. And it's true that in this life there are things that fall into that category. Things wherein if you got a second chance, you better use it wisely. But most of the time, this is not what happens. Yet still we worry. We worry into the night, early into the morning sometimes, always worrying, acting as if these mistakes, which have changed us, have also changed our world and our place in it too. And sometimes it does. Sometimes you learn things through mistakes that make you realize that something you're doing isn't quite right, and you change that. But what would this have to do with a worry? How could a worry ever change you in a way that really matters? Well, it sounds obvious. I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, I worry every day and I suffer with this. Of course it matters. But why? At its root level, why? Humans are a species of trust. The more trust in an area, the more the people will prosper. The more integrity in an area, the more the individual will prosper. And this isn't because of some scoring system we have with each other. Like when you see someone do one thing, one small thing that is dishonest, you completely write off their life. No, it's not black and white. These things never are. But what you realize is that most of this dishonesty is in our heads. And that's not to say that it doesn't exist. But I'm sure you've all been there. A stranger. You meet them, and they seem nice. Perhaps you become friends. Perhaps just stay acquaintances. But eventually they do something that makes you completely question all the trust you had in them. This makes you question reality as you know it. Because naturally, after something like this happens, it might be safe to assume that others would do the same, and that you should keep yourself safe. But if you did that, if you took this stance of a perfect home, of a perfect life, then how could you carry on? It is a game of vulnerability. It is a dance. The tighter you make your limbs, the worse you'll be at it. But if you let them all loose, you'll simply fall to the ground. As always, there is a balance. Within everything on this earth, at a root level, can be identified a balance. Sometimes it is between the good and the evil. Sometimes it's simply two benign things, but unhealthy when you have too much of them. But always a balance. And worry fits into this as a member of the great balance, but perhaps one that could be more or less important to one of you. For to worry is to let this vulnerability leave you, is to let yourself become something inhuman in many ways. You start to say things that sound right on the surface, but at a deeper level, you're scared. And everyone is, this is no surprise. Telling someone they're scared doesn't help them. But perhaps it would be confusing, because many believe they're just protecting themselves. That as they continue living, this protection stays with them. That what they've chosen to do with their lives has made them safer, and not less so. But as always, there is a balance. Where one thing collapses, another thing rises. And where one thing rises, another thing collapses. And when you start to worry, when you become tight and make these cold, stark movements, you cease to prosper. Because what if it wasn't just about safety? What if it wasn't just about what could happen? What if it was about what will happen? Because we know that to some degree, a certain percentage of our time here will be spent in a mistake. We'll do things that we later regret, and we wish we hadn't done them. But when people say no regrets, perhaps what they're really saying is, forget about these times where I've made mistakes. Forget about these times where things that are bad are likely to happen, and embrace it. And you must protect yourself. But in doing so, it is important to allow yourself to be loose, to allow things to come as they may. And as ever, I'm no expert. I know little of this place, but through reading and through dreams, I've realized certain things about it that contradict this idea of a perfect reality, of things that could be in a sweet spot. But we are humans. When we stand and we stay put, we're not still at all. Our limbs constantly accounting for the quakes and shivers that are a part of who we are. And our personalities are the same way. You make mistakes, you do really well, and in between is a median of where you are, of where you should be, despite how you fall. Because falling is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And what matters is how you pick yourself up near the end. And if you stay put, if you allow things to be more and more this way, to be more towards the tight or more towards the loose, then eventually you'll fall. Because the balance requires us to go from one side to the other and back again. Infinite cycles through our lives, just like a heartbeat, it cannot be measured. The number of cycles of in and out and left and right could not be measured. And so too with mistakes. So what is the use of worrying about them? Perhaps you could protect yourself. Or perhaps you could go too far. Perhaps you could let yourself be loose. But perhaps this could hurt you beyond where you are. It is a balance. And you should not be trying to stay put, should not be trying to be still like a machine, but to sway from the left to the right, and through this, let the balance overtake you. Let you stay where you are in the way that you must. Continue on. Keep going, as this life lets you trust. Thank you for watching.